Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Growth Show. I am delighted to be joined by Dani Grieveson today. Dani, thank you for coming on board. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Nick. Thanks so much for including and inviting me. It's wonderful to be with you.
No, it's great to have you. You are one of the most positive people I've ever met in my life, and the impact I've seen you have on people has been outrageous. So it was essential to get you on board. Now, you are, I guess people describe you as a coach, but how would you best describe you?
Well, it's a great question, because I think the field of coaching is so saturated nowadays. So I work in the field of leadership development, again, which is a ginormous field. But essentially, I see what I do as boiling down to this, and it's compassionately kicking ass. That's what I do. So I don't know what that job title is, Nick, but that's what I do.
Right, chief ass kicker. That's you. Right? And how did you get into this?
Well, like you say about being positive, you know, being positive, Nick, really is a choice. And I think you know, our life essentially boils down to the choices that we make. So through my career, I'd worked with some great brands, great people, great leaders. I'd also worked with some diabolical leaders as well. I think it's fair to say we all have. And I just saw the impact of a poor work environment, and I also saw the impact of a great work environment. And then personally, I'd had a very challenging situation with a good friend of mine ending his life, and of course that was deeply traumatic. And so I don't do what I do because I enter it with jazz hands and super positivity. I enter it because I do it because I want to support people in their development through this life. So how did I come to do it? Well, I went on a leadership course myself and discovered strength psychology. It's a bit like positive psychology, which incidentally, positive psychology is the most popular course at Harvard, run by a chap called Tal Ben-Sharma, if anyone wants to look into him. And it takes the woo-woo hippy-dippy nature out of positive psychology and brings in science and credible references. And I found strength psychology, and it really does anchor in science and intellect and you know, well-researched data. And it really spoke to me, because throughout my career, it's important for me to be credible. And now I work in leadership development, ass kicking, whatever you want to call it, coaching and development of people and teams. It was really important for me to step into that field with profound credibility. So I suppose that's a little whistle stop into why I do what I do now.
Yeah, it's perfect. And is there a particular process you follow? Like how do you, from what you've experienced before, how does sort of your process sort of differ?
Oh, thank you. So I mean, all processes are great, and I think you know, development on the whole, as long as you invest, you know, not just financially, but in terms of your energy and your commitment, as long as you invest in it, you're going to get incredible benefits from looking at your life, your team, your work, to investing in development. So I'd done a lot of that myself, both personally and professionally, and also from a physical aspect. I hadn't done biology since school, and I wanted to understand a bit more about the biomechanics and chemistry within the body. So I learned an anatomically optimized style of yoga, believe it or not. So I also am a yoga teacher, but I don't weight in that. So as I mentioned, I'd done a lot of professional development and personal development, and invested a lot of my time and energy into those arenas. And I discovered that there are some core foundations, if you like, of what it is to be human and what it is for us to succeed. And that's with the understanding that for everybody, be it an individual, a team, or a company, success is very different. Success is a very different entity. So I really wanted to circle around that point exactly, because to give you a personification of that, Donald Trump, for example, success to him is very different to Mother Teresa. Both very successful in their chosen fields. Donald Trump, arguably almighty power, if you will, globally, and Mother Teresa, almighty service to the poor. and both very, very successful in what it is that they wanted to do. So for me, it was really important to really press into what does success look like. So those foundations that I mentioned in terms of my process, I start with clarity. So my first pillar of development, there are 6, there's clarity. So getting really clear about what success looks like, because that's where we're going. And why are you here? What is it that you want? Why are we here? What is it that we need? And what brought us to be here? So clarity is my first pillar of development, if you like. Then confidence, because a lot of us appear confident, and behind sometimes there's all sorts of behaviors and characteristics that happen as a result of us not being confident or strong. So I like to press into that early. So that's my second pillar, confidence or indeed strength, team strength, if you will. Then I look at focus and discipline. Now, through my life, I don't know about you, Nick, but I've certainly encountered times when I need much more focus and discipline in areas of my life. And I think that's very, very human. So I bring focus and discipline in as the third pillar of development. Then I look at routine, that's the fourth pillar. And routine for me isn't like when we were at school and we had a timetable and we did maths for, you know, whatever time on a Tuesday and Thursday, and geography. It's not that. It's not having a timetable, because sometimes that can be restrictive and add a lot of pressure. But routine for me is the good habits that are getting us to our vision for success, and also those bad habits. What are we doing that maybe we're not aware that we're doing, or what are we doing that we're not aware how much time we're spending on that certain habit or behavior that is potentially destructive to our vision. So I really press into routine, and I love that, because out of that, honestly, miracles happen. There's a great psychologist called Dr. Steve Ballmer. He looks into the importance of routine in terms of stress management, better sleep. So having a good routine, i.e. better habits, is really, really beneficial for all areas of our life. So after routine, sorry, I'm really going, but you can probably tell I love it. I absolutely love what I do. I get really, really excited and passionate. My fifth column, which to me is probably the pivotal one, and one that a lot of people that I've worked with have never even thought about, and that's fulfillment. Fulfillment. Now, I've worked in environments such as Top Gear, I've worked at Rolls-Royce, I've worked Princess Yachts. So I've worked with some very, very wealthy people, and often celebrities. I did the Olympic Games with Coca-Cola, so I worked with quite a few celebrities coming across my path there. And not all of them, but I identified that a lot of people aren't actually fulfilled. They seem to have it all in terms of beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful husband, lovely cars, status, but yet that fulfillment piece isn't there. And I had a call from an FD, a finance director, a few weeks ago, you know, exactly this story. I've got the house, I've got the kids, I've got the stables, but to me, there's no meaning. So I press into fulfillment, because for me, that is pivotal. And this quote really, really landed with me, is that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
So where let's take fulfillment. Where do you start on someone on helping them actually identify where fulfillment might come in their lives?
Well, I've got one more pillar to go, and then can I come back to come back?
My dyslexic counting was terrible there.
I'm also dyslexic, so I'm with you, but I'll just finish. And I want to press into this, Nick, because it's so important. So my final pillar, the sixth one, is success and sustainability. So that vision of success, are we there? And how do we sustain this momentum? How do we keep it going forward? It might mean more coaching, might mean more development, might mean we look at, you know, different paths. But so the final one is success and sustainability. So to come back to fulfillment, and as I say, it's really, really pivotal, Nick, and I'm so glad that you've asked that. How do we find fulfillment, essentially, is what you're asking. Well, it's such a big question, because if we look at people like Robin Williams, so Mrs. Doubtfire, the genie in the first Aladdin, one of the funniest men, and you can't think of Robin Williams or evoke memories of those films or sitcoms that he was in without laughter. And so he was a man who was determined to be the funniest man in the world. That was success to him, you know, the sitcoms he was on and the movies that he made. And he was, everybody knew him as a superstar and guaranteed laughter. And ultimately, it was to his detriment. This success, this global stardom that he chased and hungered for, he had a drink problem, he had drugs, and in the end, he took his life. So I look to him and I see there is a man that was deeply unfulfilled by his arguably global success. So how do you start? Well, first things first is get the right people around you. I think our life and the quality of our life is certainly determined by the quality of our relationships. Be that with your family, be that with your team, be that romantically. Look at the relationships that are in your life and the quality of those. So I really do think, and I was coaching a business leader, and he was saying a few weeks ago that in the last 6 years, his career has gone from strength to strength to strength. And he puts it down to his partner, having that person at home. And we were just talking about Clive Woodward, former England coach, in their absolute heyday. And he said that it was really important to involve the players' wives and partners in his home barbecues and indeed the decisions that he was making and taking. So relationships are so important to our makeup. And that might not be that you're in a romantic relationship at the moment, but look at those relationships that you're close with and which ones can you connect with on a new level and which ones do you need to question. So first things first, I'd start with your relationships. And next thing I'd have a think about, Nick, is think of a time when you were fulfilled. When did you last really feel deep fulfillment? When did you last feel real deep contentment, satisfaction? And write down where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, and how you were feeling. So those are some places that I'd start. And as I say, I really do press into this area, because for me, the outside stuff, the handbags, the cars, the houses, it's all just peripheral. For me, it really does start right in here to change somebody.
No, I think that's great, and it's. I mean, in my world, I'm coming into contact every day with top leaders, and you can definitely get a sense of purpose from a few and fulfillment in a few, and a few who just you can see they're on a never-ending journey of work, and there'll never be that sort of happy moment, really, which is quite sad, actually. Sad seeing that. And how from this journey of learning you've been on, how have you rewired yourself in all this? What changes have you seen in you from all the learning you've done over the years?
Well, pressing into exactly what you've just said about the head honchos and grand formages that you work with, and that those people that just work relentlessly, and yet there's a sense of purpose missing. So when I wind back to days that I was working 80 hours a week, and Nick, I didn't know why. I just knew I was a part of this amazing brand, and I was, my relationships were failing, friendship, family, romantic, because I was just working and didn't have energy for anything else. And then I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I genuinely found what I was meant to do in life. I did this strength psychological profiling. My number one psychological strength out of 34 is developer. Meaning my natural gifting, it's in my psychology, I can't get away from it, is I want to develop people. I'm just hungry to make people better at their best, live their potential. It's my number one. And so when I discovered that, it was a real light bulb moment for me. I'm like, I've got to pursue this, because I knew I loved being with people. I knew I loved encouraging people. I knew I loved getting the best out of people. And I just knew then I've got to pursue this path. And believe it or not, friends in recent weeks have said to me, they've said, particularly one, David, he said, it's so amazing to see that your path is lighting up following your purpose. Your path is lighting up following your purpose. And so when you work with these business leaders, and you know that, you know, probably at home they're not just having a bottle of wine, it's probably 3 or 4 bottles of wine in the evening. You know, you've seen it, I've seen it, and maybe even other substances are coming into play, and perhaps their relationship's failing, or there's an affair going on, or, you know, things that aren't necessarily conducive to a productive work environment and indeed relationships. Then I think it's time to, you know, unwind and unpack a little bit. You know, what are we doing this for? What are we doing this for? And I think COVID's been a really, really good leveler for all of us, in fairness. But I've found, and maybe you have too, Nick. I found that people have been coming here. In fact, I've just had a conversation that people feel they're very much at a crossroads, or feeling lost in this time, and needing to find that purpose. I'm really finding that I wouldn't say I'm stratospheric or anything, or crazy busy, but I found that people have come on board more with that exact reason, that they're losing purpose, not finding their focus. And the conversation I had just earlier was that I feel I'm at a crossroads.
Yeah, and I'd say, especially for leaders. I mean, so my own personal experience of this has been, I gained back 4.5 hours of, you know, no travel time, and I filled them with work, right? Which was great. So there was this unbelievable high at the beginning of a lockdown where personal productivity went through the roof, right? But that's my personal productivity, and that's maybe not actually what's the best thing for the business, right? But I also felt a sense of emptiness, where half of my skill set had been taken away because I can't be on hand to help people. You know, the person who just popped their head in the office for assistance, that sort of spontaneous moments, that they're gone. And from reaching out to my networks, there's a lot of people who have been sort of sitting there challenging themselves because their skill set's taken away. You know, asking themselves, what do they do? Where can they keep adding value? How can they get that constant feedback loop? And I don't care how many Zoom calls you have, you just can't replicate that, right? And I think it's been a real mental struggle for high achievers in particular, who are just not getting that sort of sense of feedback. So I've seen that massively over the last, what is it? Well, it's 9 months now, isn't it? Gosh, it's gone on forever. And one thing that I found interesting is that your client base ranged from law firms to the army, right? Does your content change? Because they are two very. I've worked very closely with both as well, and they are two very different sort of personality types. I think both think, but I think lawyers sometimes think they've got a similar mindset, but I don't think they do. Do you find the content's the same? Actually, it's all resonating with people because the way we're wired, or you change content depending on your subjects?
Really great question. And yes, they are different. You know, the army. I've just been lecturing the military this morning, and a bit like harping back to my Top Gear days. You know, it's quite a lot of blowing things up and going in and sorting things out. But you know, wrapped in this, you know, and they are incredible to work with. I can't take anything away from them, and you know, wrapped in this amazing peacekeeping vision, actually, and it absolutely wonderful people to work with. And the same with lawyers, again, wonderful, and I really enjoy working with them. And you know, as you've probably seen in the news, there's a bit of a crisis, you know, in terms of mentality, and as you say, you know, that lack of interaction, that you know, even if it's just to say, and one of my legal clients has reflected this back, even if just to say, I like your dress today, or you know, I like, you know, just that level of conversation we're not having. But in terms of changing content, I wouldn't say dramatically. You know, those pillars of development are where I base it. But I do say to all of my clients, if there's something that you want to unpack and bring to me, then do. So if it's on a one-to-one basis, of course, you know, you individualize it, and everyone's got a different challenge. Of course they have. So that's essentially the process that I use for wherever people come from, because I found that all of us are human. I only deal with humans, and that works in human development.
Yeah. And what's been your biggest takeaway from the lockdown? What changes have you seen in people and businesses?
I honestly, disconnection, just inherently, Nick, as you say, and you love to nurture people and just put your head around everything. Okay, everything going, how can I help, and give them that upbeat tone, and it is that tone or that look in the eye or that little body language that motivates people somehow. And I think, is it 55% of what we communicate is through our body language. So in the office environment, we're not getting that. And that what it's like to sit back on a chair and roar with laughter because someone in the office has cracked a joke or something's happened, and that's just wonderful. So I think disconnection is the problem. And yes, as you say, Zoom calls and video calls, they are where we are now, and we're doing our very best with them, and this is what we can do and have to do. But it doesn't replace that human connection. And to use Brené Brown's word, we're hardwired for connection. Right in here in our neurological pathways, we need to be with each other. And that body language, when you're on a screen, it's so hard to communicate. That when we're all kind of hunched round, our shoulders and backs are getting sore because we're like this for sometimes 12 hours a day. So I'm noticing, whatever sector, financial, legal, logistics, whatever sector, I'm noticing that disconnection is having a real impact on people. But it's not just disconnection in work. It's that a client of mine, amazing client, leader, fantastic. His sister works in the NHS, and he phoned me and he said, have you got 15 minutes? I said, yes, of course. And he was in floods of tears. He hadn't been able to see his sister because of COVID. She works in the NHS, and he is feeling that disconnection from her acutely. And I don't think it's just the disconnection in our teams, Nick, and in our workspaces. It's disconnection all around in every which way in those relationships, which I mentioned. The quality of our relationships is our life quality.
Yeah. And do you think we're forming new habits though? Like, it's definitely felt, I mean, in the UK at the moment, we've gone into a second lockdown. So this has been an on-off sort of 9-month period of doing this. It definitely feels that taking people back into, let's say, the old office environment will be now a transition to get people back into that, right? Like, I do think new habits have been created, quite dangerous habits. Like, it feels all very transactional. Because of the lack of sort of human interaction. But what's your thoughts about how we got to go about helping people with that transition back into, let's say, an office environment, if that's the way people want to go?
Well, the reason I've got a smile on my face, I had a conversation with a lawyer client actually, and she's become pregnant in lockdown, and she said she's due in January, and she said, do you know what? It's actually brilliant. I'm not commuting, so it's not tiring me out. I'm not bashing into people, and so in lots of ways there are many benefits to be taken from it. But in terms of new habits, I think it will depend on the law of the land for when and how we do return. But I do know one thing, Nick. I do know that we have to look after our back, neck, and shoulders in this time. A good friend of mine, as you may imagine, I've had 3 knee operations from 3 marathons that I ran. So I'm fairly great friends with my physio because it came with a lot of physio. And he's actually bought a spinal decompression unit in this time because we're all slumped and not in a great posture, and indeed not moving about as much as we could or should. Our spines have become compressed, and you may have noticed it in your neck. So I would suggest people looking after their physical health, right away. So if that's one habit that you can build in, if you're not already, look at your physical health and what more you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought this lockdown would be fairly quick. So I remember sitting on a bed with a hamper for a desk for my first sort of week of this, and then realised I probably want to look after myself a tiny bit from this.
Yeah, Nick, I've got to say, you're actually on a cake tin at the moment.
yeah. Still haven't invested. Took about 6 months to get some decent Wi-Fi as well, which is not really good. And what's the thing that's sort of burning for you at the moment? What's sort of on your sort of purpose agenda at the moment to help people, or what you think should be on their radars sort of from a mindset wise?
I think great question, and I am so into mindset and attitude. I really, it's something I just spoke to military on this morning about. I think try not to look too far. I know all of the news at the moment is all about Christmas and what we are doing or what we're not doing. But try to keep your mindset focused on today. You know, get what can you do today, or indeed, what is your outcome that you want to achieve today? What is the outcome that you're getting to? Is it that you need to do that report? Is it that you need to finish that spreadsheet? Is it that you know you need to have that challenging conversation that's been on the back burner for a week or two now? You know, what is your outcome today? And I think focusing on the outcome is really, really powerful, because it's so hard to plan, you know, what's happening between now and Christmas. Understandably, businesses have to strategize. Of course, I'd imagine 2021 in the bag, so to speak. But, you know, personally, for everyone as individuals in their home, I think looking at today, focus on what you can do today.
Okay, and if you're someone listening to this and they have that sort of light bulb moment of realizing they haven't ever really stepped back to evaluate who they are, right? Or you know, there's a lot of emphasis in the next month around people making plans for 2021, right? And we all do it. It's a sort of it's a reset, it's a restart, it's a refocus for all of us. But if you're an individual and you're thinking, right, I want to actually evaluate who I am, understand more about me, what steps would you recommend they take to sort of start that journey?
Oh, great question. And interesting you say about everyone thinking about strategy. I have a coach every Saturday morning. He's great, amazing, and I've got exactly that tomorrow morning. But in terms of people thinking about bringing myself back to myself, you know, who am I? What's my identity? What are my values? What fulfills me, for example? First place I would start is honestly take the Gallup Clifton Strengths Assessment. If people want to get in touch with me, I can help them do that, of course. But that gives you your natural psychological profiling. So naturally, are you quite a self-assured character? Are you a high achiever? Are you an activator? Do you start things? Do you light fires, make things happen? Are you high in empathy? Are you high in positivity? Are you high in discipline? Is that a characteristic? These are all strengths that Gallup deem as human strengths. So I would really start there, because it gives you a clear profiling of who you naturally are. And the chances of you having the same delineation of 34, so your order of 34 and mine, Nick, there's a 1 in 33 million chance of them being the same. 1 in 33 million. So what that means is it's as pretty unique as your fingerprint. So if you think about your fingerprint, it's unique. So by doing this profiling, I mean, there are loads of profiling sets out there. It's just Gallup, the one that I'm trained and certified in, so know the most about. But it's a really, really good framework of who you naturally are. But for me, Nick, it's great knowing who you naturally are. It's absolutely terrific. But what are you doing with it? What are you doing with it? You know, that's crucially what matters. What are you doing with it? And that's exactly what I and you indeed develop people into. You know, it's what are you doing with this? You know, what are you doing to get to where it is that you want to be?
Yeah, and I think with your referral to the surveys and reports that can come out on people, we obviously both from the same sort of world, so we're engaging with these all the time. And one thing I love from like I'm a very data-led person, right? And sort of just typical, can't read fiction books, but love a manual, give me all that kind of stuff. So doing these for me is a half yearly assessment of actually progress. You know, watching over the years how empathy levels have changed, right? Like, am I actually developing as a person? What's being highlighted? How am I evolving? And I think I love that sort of feedback loop. And one of the things we don't get throughout our careers is just that feedback, unless you're engaged with a coach or you're in a business that really invests in you. So I think taking these first steps to sort of it just helps you sort of ask the questions to yourself that you can explore more, right? Either through the help of someone like yourself, or just like personal, the personal investment you need to take it on. And from what you're seeing, so there's this Christmas period sort of coming up. Businesses are, I mean, it sounds like a lot are going to be locked away from each other, and that I think it's a really important time to connect, and I'm slightly nervous about it because it was, for us as a business, for example, it's such a fun time, and we really just do get to sort of hug it out and have a great experience. What do you think about that? How are we going to sort of replace that if it's going to be like a Zoom culture for this Christmas?
Yeah, Nick, it is, and that's why I say it's what we can do at the moment, and it's far from ideal, but it's where we are, and so I think doing that. But for any leaders listening or watching today, I think it's really important to recognize your team. So not just at Christmas, not throughout the year, and consider honestly your team. Have you recognized them at least once a week through COVID? And I'm not talking about recognizing, giving them a pat on the head like a good Labrador. I'm talking about, just an acknowledgement. Thanks for getting that presentation over on time. Or I really like what you said in that meeting. Should we have a 5 minutes and unpack that a little bit? Just recognition every 7 days is really, really powerful in the productivity of your team. And arguably, when we're all working from home with babies, laundry, kitchens to attend to, productivity does go down. But recognizing your team every 7 days, their Gallup research shows, and you're like this with your data and stats, Gallup research shows that they're between 10 and 20% more productive. And by building in what we call a praise habit every 7 days, so a praise, an acknowledgement, a thank you. So leaders do put this in your diaries to do every 7 days, so it's a reminder for yourself. Your team are 73% more likely to perform at a higher level. So they're going to give that little bit more. So where they think, oh, that will do, you'll get do you know what, I'm just going to look into that again, or I'm going to get that on time, or I'm going to do that the day before it's needed. So 73% more likely to perform at a higher level with a praise habit every 7 days. So recognize your team every 7 days, especially now in this work from home environment, and definitely put it in for Q1. Definitely put it in for Q1.
Perfect. That's fascinating. So there's been a lot of talk of positivity, which is great. But what annoys you? Like what gets under your skin?
Honestly, I let down. A lack of integrity. I really, right. It honestly physically affects me. It honestly physically affects me. And I've learned this through experience. I've analyzed situations and experiences, and I'm certainly not sitting here saying I've been perfect, but so I've worked out and evaluated my experiences, and when people don't live up to their word, it really does get under my skin, Nick. So and I let them know that. So I've got far better, not perfect again, but far better at boundary setting in my older years.
All right. So with the younger you, so just not address it before? Are you actually now addressing, if someone is wronging you this way, you're now addressing this?
That's a whole other conversation. But sorry, go on. Sorry, to answer your question about setting boundaries. This is something that I do work with people on, especially when they're very high in empathy. So that feeling of how other people might feel. So to say to somebody, look, I'm not available for you after 11 o'clock. Some people actually really struggle with. So setting 11 o'clock a.m. So setting boundaries is something that I do work with people on, and I've got far more discerning about in my older years.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is setting at the start avoids sort of the pain at the end, right?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that anyone who is experiencing that kind of anxiety around certain issues, if they really spend the time to work out how can you kill them at source and put those boundaries in place, it avoids a lot of pain sort of later down the line.
Nick, you're absolutely right. And arguably sometimes it's not, because life is an evolving process. We work in the development field, and sometimes situation doesn't determine that you can set that out from the start. It sometimes is an evolving process, and that's where those difficult conversations that I mentioned sometimes do need to happen to re-establish what the boundaries are. But circling back to my process, if you like, that's why I like to get really clear about what success is to the person or team that I'm working with, because that's where we're going. You know, let's get really, really laser focused on that. And I start with that.
That's perfect. And that's part of the six. Is that called the 6 Pillars program? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, 6 Pillars of Development. I call it, which is good fun.
It's good, strong name, and says exactly what it does on the tin, which is perfect there. And just before we bring this to an end, is there any other sort of message you think we should be getting out there right now to people or businesses?
Well, before we do, I want to ask you one thing, Nick. So you mentioned about, you know, not being able to kind of open a door and, you know, give someone a bit of a, you know, a support or motivation that's in your office or your team. So how are you navigating that in this virtual world?
So we do quite a bit, actually. So there was a poker tournament on last night where they're playing poker, but there's a live Zoom going on just for actually, you know, have some drinks and just relax and some sort of just banter. We are constantly using a variety of different apps, actually. So Zoom is the professional one for, you know, very serious conversation. We use one called House Party, which lets you play games on, and you can crash anyone's conversation. So if you don't lock your conversation out, you can just burst in there and say hi to people, and it actually adds a bit of spontaneity, which is great. And then we're still alternating people coming into the office, and actually at the moment they are probably our most unproductive days, purely because we've missed each other, right? And we just have those little social interactions, which is so important, you know. But we all leave that day feeling super energized. So I think the future looks like that much bigger balance of work from home, but it's really shown me the importance of when we get together to connect. And especially any business that is consulting or has a sales floor or a marketing business, the way some of those teams are wired, that if you remove that social interaction from them, you just see that lack of productivity. Like, there are certain jobs in life where you just have to do 1,000 phone calls and you get told to go away 1,000 times, right? And there's lots of those jobs in the world, and doing that on your own is pretty crushing, right? You know, having some form of competition is key. Some kind of just fun, right? You know, like the key word is sort of fun, and it's a challenge for us. I get together loads of people just going, how do we just try and make this sort of fun? So we had fitness exercises. So we have a WhatsApp group where we would do past the push-ups, right? And you'd nominate someone and do that, and, you know, we make sure it's all fair and nice and nothing too sort of crazy. But just stuff where we could tag people and just get something where they're on camera again doing something a bit silly, right? So we're constantly evolving. I come from a culture of like lots of rewards, so, you know, bottles of this going out, experiences, little takeaways for people, you know, just little moments outside of work to show that we sort of care, right? Because we do. That's the thing. Like we do. Like we genuinely sort of miss these guys. So we're trying that, but it's the one thing that keeps me up at night, just going like, how do we make sure it's solid so we don't lose culture? And culture is the thing we've worked so hard to build. So you know, the idea of it eking away because of the fact it's so transactional is it is a worry. It is a worry. So but hey, that's me. I should be paying you for this session.
I love it, and I love the idea of press ups, and perhaps you could go forward into burpees bingo that no one's going to want to play.
No, we got a bit rid of that. It was called it was inappropriately called the Corona Toner, which we changed the name pretty quickly to. Yeah, so before that wasn't very good. But yeah, I just think it's those kind of, you know, mini talent shows or stuff that probably is a bit embarrassing for people, if you know, and it just sort of pushes you out of your comfort zone for 2 seconds, and gives us something to talk about really as well, which is the other factor right now, other than what box set you plowed through and all that kind of business there. So, you know, I think, Dani, thank you so much for your time today. I think it's been great. I'm going to put some details at the end of this video, how people can get in contact with you if they want to engage, and it'd be great to have you on again, to work through some of the other challenges we're going through, if you're up for it.
Of course. And can I just give you an idea that I had for one of my clients, actually?
Yeah, cool.
And you saying about, you know, the fitness and everything just spark this, because we all like to feel a little bit better in this time. And one of my clients that I see on a one-to-one basis, amazing leader, great guy, properly northern, really like him, and he actually wants to lose a bit of weight, because in the first lockdown, you know, with all the carrot cake and baking that we were all doing, you know, he put on. Anyway, so we've said that in January, and maybe this is an idea for your team. Now, none of us have been anywhere that we have been able to wear the glad rags. So the ball dresses, the big earrings, I know you've got a few, Nick, but the black tie, the tuxedo, all of this has come about. None of it's come out this year, none of it. So he and I have said to each other that he wants to get into his tuxedo. So in January, we're going to sit together on video, because that's where we are, on video in our black tie. We're going to have a session in black tie. And maybe that's something that people will like to do over this Christmas party period, because no one's getting their party frocks out. So maybe there's a team meeting or a session or something you can do around the idea of the glad rags coming out for that meeting or that session.
We are doing exactly that, actually. That's we love that, and I just any excuse to dress up. We've got a guru we get in January who does some deep breathing exercises with us, and makes us all dance. And this sounds like a terrible advert to work at Eximius, actually, but we love it. You know, it brings everyone out of their shell. The Wim Hof breathing stuff is just scarily fun if you haven't done it before. Scarily fun. But thank you again for today. Like we're definitely going to figure out. I mean, with the pillars you're working through, there are hours and hours and hours of conversation on just each element of that and each sub niche within it. But thank you for giving us an overview of the wonderfulness that is you, and I'm looking forward to catching up very soon.
Oh, Nick, thank you so much. Great to be with you. Thank you.
Pleasure. And thanks you at home, and we will catch up with you all soon. All the best. Goodbye.